welcome to the Foaling channel. My name is Ava and I want to talk to you today about breeding horses. I've had horses in my life for over 50 years. When I left school, I started working with hunters, race horses, show jumpers, and then I went back into full-time education to train for a different career. But I always kept horses in my life. I either had horses or trained horses. I worked with them, I wrote about them, and I think I'd like to share, well, I bred them, and I'd like to share some of the information I've gleaned over the years with you. I just want to say that any information I give is not intended to supersede any veterinary advice. The information I want to give is mainly for small breeders, first-time breeders, people who are not very experienced in it or who just want to breed on a small scale. That was me. I was never a big breeder and I've never worked on a stud farm. I guess I want to talk first about, well, I want to ask first of all, why it is you want to breed horses. Do you have a mare that you think you'd like to breed from? That's always a good start. Maybe you'd like to breed the occasional foal as a hobby. Maybe you want to breed a couple of foals here and there. Maybe you want to breed horses to sell. But I have to tell you that breeding foals to sell is not profitable on a small scale. The big stud farms operate on economies of scale, and you don't have that luxury as a small breeder. It's very costly. There are certain things that are stacked against you if you're breeding foals to sell, and that is that people who are looking for young horses to buy are not generally looking for foals. They're looking for, at a minimum, 2- and 3-year-olds that they can actually start doing some groundwork with, that they can start training when they're in their late 3-year-old and start working on more immediately. If you're buying a foal, you've got to put it on the back burner and forget about it until it's old enough to actually do some work. So let's look at where you are going to find a mare. Well, maybe you already have a mare, as discussed, and you'd like to breed from her. Or maybe you know someone that's got a mare for sale that you think would be good for breeding and you'd like to give it a try. In today's market, generally speaking, brood mares are not expensive. Even well-bred, proven brood mares are often quite reasonably priced. Sometimes it's a mare, sometimes you can find a mare that was a competitive horse and she's been injured, but she'd still be good for breeding. She's not good as a riding horse anymore. Therefore, her value will be adjusted appropriately. There's also a chance that you may be able to find a horse to loan for breeding. This does happen occasionally. Some young woman who's going to college or university has a really nice mare, but they know they're not going to be able to ride for the next 2 or 3 years. So they're happy to lend her out as a brood mare. I do have to warn you though that you should always have a contract in place when you're loaning out a horse so that everybody's clear on the expectations of either side. The owner's taking a big risk. The mare could die foaling, the mare could have an accident and die. The risk for you is that the mare might not get in foal, or it might be difficult and expensive to get her in foal. And the risk for you also is that the mare might lose the foal during foaling or abort the foal earlier on. So there are risks involved. The other thing to consider when you're loaning a mare for breeding is that you are going to need to have possession of her for 18 months to 2 years. You're going to get her, have her tested, make sure she's reproductively sound and that she doesn't have any diseases. Then you're going to have her inseminated, and that doesn't always work out first time. You might have to do it several times, and each time it's going to cost you money. And then she might finally get it in fall, and you're going to wait 11 months to a year for her to produce the foal. Then she's going to have the foal for about 6 months to 7 months and then be weaned. So you're going to have her for up to 2 years, 18 months to 2 years. So be aware that it's a long-term process. If you're really lucky, you can find a really nice, well-bred mare who's already in foal. That's a bonus. It takes a lot of the pressure off at the front end of breeding. You don't have to worry about that. The mare's already in foal. It's just your job to bring her up to foaling. There are 3 main things that you're going to look for in a broodmare, or in any horse for that matter. But you want a mare with good conformation. Conformation means the way the horse is put together, and obviously the build and physique of some horses make them more capable of doing some jobs. So it's important to know what you're breeding foals for, what market you're aiming at, or even if you want to keep them, what you intend to do with them, and find a mare that has the appropriate conformation. She doesn't have to be perfect, but as close to as possible for the money that you spend. The second consideration is temperament. Now, you want a mare that's easy to handle, especially if this is your first time breeding a foal. Some mares are nervous and highly strung. Those mares are more likely to be more foal proud, so you may have difficulty in handling her after the foal is born. You may have difficulty handling her during insemination. So it does make it easier if the mare is calm and easy to handle. Having said that, I have bred from a very nervous mare once, and her foals turned out just perfect. They were sweet-natured, easy to handle. So perhaps it has more to do with the way the foals are handled from birth rather than what they inherit from the mother. The third consideration is athletic ability. Now, if you're breeding, you want to breed foals that are going to go on to be dressage or jumping horses or eventers, you want extremely athletic horses, horses that move really well, and they're got good, effortless strides, carry themselves well. I heard from an old Irishman once that fools judge foals, and in a way I think he's right. I'm not, I guess I can tell a reasonably good foal. I've got a reasonable idea of what I'm looking for. On the other hand, I have to say all foals float like fairies and they look lovely. So it takes a very, very expert eye, which I don't completely have, to recognize a good foal and its potential. So you're going to be judging the potential of the foal on the mare and the stallion. Athletic ability is also dictated to a great degree by conformation. Sometimes you get horses that are naturally really move beautifully, but other times you get horses that look very ordinary when they move. So it's training. It's a combination of training and conformation that can bring out the best in those horses. But as I say, if the horse already has outstanding movement, that's going to make the training a lot easier. Lastly, for choosing a mare for first-time breeding, it makes a lot of sense if you can find a mare that's already had a foal and she's successfully foaled without any complications. It's very rarely that mares do have problems. Having said that, it is absolutely essential that someone be with her for the foaling, just in case. And it's a good idea to have emergency equipment and materials on hand, just in case. I would recommend a pre-prepared foaling kit is an excellent idea. Okay, you've decided on a mare or you've got a mare. Next step is to decide on a stallion. Equines are all one species, equine cabalus. That's the best domestic horse. There are other equids, and those would be zebras, donkeys, asses. But we're talking about horses. And we have never, in the history of horse kind, had such a wide selection of stallions to choose from, because the fact about it is that today you can pick on a stallion anywhere in the world. Managers of that stallion can collect the semen, package it, and ship it abroad. So you're able to use it, you're able to import semen from all kinds of other places. Now, I would suggest that if you're going down that road, you do it through an agent, because they'll take care of all the customs. But let's go back a bit and talk about this type of stallion that you want. You don't have to be constrained by a particular breed. People crossbreed horses. They're all one species, so they will all crossbreed. If you're going to choose a stallion for your mare, you are going to look at the same three things in a stallion as you would in the mare. You want conformation, temperament, and athletic ability. The stallion's strong points should counteract your mare's weak points, so you need to take a good look at her conformation and see where does she need improving. If you know of a stallion near you or in the region, if you have the opportunity to go and look, then do that. Breed societies in this country, I'm in the UK, breed societies in this country have stallion shows, usually in the summer, where you can get a good look at their choice of stallions. Stallions that are registered with a breed society have satisfied the standards of that breed society, so that horse will reflect the characteristics that are essential in that breed. The other way you can find a stallion is to go online and look at some of the stallions that are in the big stud farms in Europe. It is now possible to get semen shipped from Europe to Britain overnight for use the next day. These have loads of stallions. You can decide which stallion you want. You can contact them and say, I want to breed for this stallion. They have a certain set fee. You pay the money in advance. They ship the semen to you. Now, if that's chilled semen, they'll package it. They'll add some semen extender to it. They'll package it appropriately, and they will ship it to you overnight. Your vet will receive it the next morning and be able to inseminate the mare the same day, the next day, the day after it's been collected. There are many recognized European warm blood breeds. In Germany alone, they've got more than 10. I did read somewhere that it was somewhere over 15, but I only know a few of them off the top of my head, and those would be Holsteiner, Hanoverian, Trakehner, Oldenburg, and Westphalian. There are other magnificent warm blood horses. They would be the Dutch warm blood horse, which is very popular in competition. Swedish warm bloods, Selle Francais of France, Belgian warm bloods. There are even Latvian and Polish warm bloods. So there is no shortage of warm blood horses to choose from. Now, if you're looking at other breeds, if you want to consider other breeds, there are other breed societies that have a good range of stallions. In this country, the UK, there are quite a number of breeders of pure Spanish horses. Every year they have a Spanish show, and they have some Iberian horse shows in between as well. So usually the stallions are on show there. GB Prix, I think, is the is the online source for the Spanish breed, the pure Spanish breed, and you'll be able to find probably a list of breeders there. Or there's another site, the registration site for Spanish horses is the BAPSH, I think it is, and it's the British Pure Spanish Horse, British Association for the Purebred Spanish Horse, that's the way it goes. There are also Arabian horses, and I think there's an Arabian Horse Society in Britain. Again, probably you'll find lists of breeders on their websites. There are a lot of British breeds. There are Cleveland Bays, Hackney horses, Hackney ponies. And if you want to look at our more traditional mountain and moorland breeds, you've got a huge number to choose from. There's the Highland pony. Highland pony's a very strong, reliable, calm, nice chap. He's stands about 15 hands, usually quite stocky, so up to weight. Connemara ponies, very athletic, very versatile. Then moving down in height, around about the same height, you've got the Welsh cobs. Now the Welsh stud book has 4 sections. There is Section A and Section B, and those are small children's ponies, small ponies that make nice children's ponies. There's a Section C, which is a nice small horse, and then there's the Section D, which is the Welsh cob, which is, again, he's bigger, he's about 15 hands, 15 2. Then there's the rest of our mountain and moorland ponies, and please forgive me if I leave any of them out, but I think there are New Forest ponies, Dartmoor and Exmoor, Fell ponies, Dales ponies, Shetland ponies. I think that's all of them. But there's a wide variety to choose from, and the mountain and moorland ponies, as well as being versatile, able to do a lot of things, riding club, pony club, etc. There are also a lot of shows in Britain that have classes for the mountain and moorland ponies, for the British bred ponies. So if you're not necessarily wanting to ride but want to breed foals to use as show ponies, then that's an excellent choice. The Germans are experts at producing athletic sport horses. They have, for each of their breeds, they have stallion performance tests where a team of experts will look at the horses and judge them according to their conformation, temperament, and athletic ability. They might categorize those characteristics differently, but basically that's what they're looking for. These breeds have been prominent in dressage, show jumping, and eventing for the best part of a century now, so they've proved themselves. Most of the warm blood horses, including our own British warm blood horse, which would be the Cleveland Bay, they had a similar start in their history, and that would be as dual purpose horses. They were used for working the land, they were used for pulling carts and carriages, and they were also used for riding. So from those beginnings, as motorized vehicles took over and tractors took over the farm work, the field work, these horses were then repurposed as sport horses. So they have been, most of the breeds have been infused with quite a bit of thoroughbred blood to lighten them, and they're extremely athletic. The other athletic warm blood horse that I've kind of overlooked a little bit here is the Irish sport horse. Irish sport horses are renowned all over the world. They make terrific horses in almost any discipline, particularly show jumping and eventing. They're much sought after, and the Irish have an excellent history of breeding really top-class horses. Again, infused with thoroughbred. I think their beginnings were like with the Irish draft horse, which was a field horse used for farm work. And then they were crossbred with thoroughbreds, the Irish thoroughbred, to produce a really, really athletic but strong, sturdy sport horse. They're wonderful horses. Your next consideration is going to be, what form of insemination are you going to use for your mare to get her pregnant? The most obvious and the most traditional up until recent years has been live cover. But nowadays you find if you take a mare for live cover and the mare might be a little bit aggressive or nervous, they will use a dummy, collect the semen while the mare is there and inseminate the mare straight away. So it might not necessarily be traditional live cover, but anyway, it's still an instant process. Whereas your other option, and I would recommend this for either live cover or artificial insemination for first time or small breeders, with chilled semen. In that process you put in an order. Now again, if you're ordering semen from a stud farm abroad, the bigger stud farms have it set up so that they kind of take care of the import process, the documentation that goes with it, but some of them don't. So one of the best ways of importing semen from European stud farms is through an agent. And there are several, in Britain there are several places that will import semen for you. One of the most popular is Elite Stallions, and they have a whole book of hundreds of stallions to choose from. And the other one is Stallion AI, which is an insemination station where they take stallions and collect the semen from stallions here in Britain, but they will also import, I believe I'm right in saying they will import semen from abroad as well, or you can have semen sent to them and send your mare to them for insemination. Frozen semen is another option. There are pros and cons to frozen semen. One of them is that you can order the semen. It has to be sent to a veterinary surgeon that has the facility to store frozen semen. That's very important because it can't just be stored in a fridge. It has to be in a special area. And not all vets have that. So that's one of the drawbacks. But the benefit of that is that you can get the semen imported, have it sitting there waiting for when your mare is ready, and then they'll obviously take it out of its frozen condition and get it to the right temperature, check it to see that it's viable, and inseminate the mare. With chilled semen, although chilled semen has a very high success rate, but one of the drawbacks with it is that you have to catch the mare at exactly the right time. So the mare is going to ovulate, and you have to have her inseminated while the egg is still viable. Once the egg has departed, then there's no point in having the semen. So that's a little bit trickier. But usually what happens is that her egg is viable for a few days. So once she ovulates, or when she's very close to ovulation, and your vet can usually tell that by the size of her follicles, when she's very close to ovulation, order the semen, have it sent either to yourself or to your vet. Make sure that your vet's available. If you're having it sent to yourself, make sure the vet's going to be available the next day to inseminate her, and it must be used the next day. Chilled semen won't keep. It has had semen extender added to it, so it will last longer than if you didn't bother chilling it. But it's not going to last forever, so it has to be used fairly quickly, within 24 hours probably. The benefit of frozen semen, as I've said, you don't have to use it immediately. You can use it when the mare is ready. But the other advantage to frozen semen is frozen semen has been collected from some of Europe's or the world's top sport horses before they died. So the stallion might be dead, but his semen is frozen in a bank and it's still viable. You can also use frozen semen from horses in Australia, the United States. So that opens up the doors a little bit, well, a lot actually, in terms of breeding. I know, for example, I knew a couple in Canada who bred Frisian horses, and they had 6 Frisian mares, but they didn't have a stallion. They imported the semen. So they were always able to breed from top European, top Dutch horses and breed them in Canada and sell them. There was a huge market for them in the United States. So yes, it does open up doors farther afield. One thing I should point out here is that thoroughbreds don't use artificial insemination. As far as I know, thoroughbred race horses can only breed live cover. I think it's a matter of being able to verify that these horses are who the producers say they are. Obviously, for warm bloods, that has to be the same. They have to be able to verify it, but I guess in thoroughbreds, the thoroughbred world has decided, and they need to know that that stallion covered that mare live, and that she can only be pregnant with a foal from that stallion. So, to summarize insemination, the most traditionally common way was live cover. Nowadays, probably the most popular, especially for imported semen, is chilled semen, both with high rates of success. Frozen semen, a little trickier because of the handling, the integrity of the semen while it's being handled and shipped, a little more tricky, but it is another option. Okay, so you've got your mare, you've decided on your stallion. The next consideration is, what time of year do you want your foal to be born? The gestation in mares is approximately 11 months, can be as long as a year, can even be longer than that, but that's unusual. So you want to plan for, if it's a maiden mare, if you're a first-time breeder, or if you're a small breeder, you probably want to plan for the foals to be born end of April, early May. By that time, there's not much fear of frost, the grass is growing, and it's not so cold for the fall. Breeders who want to present their foals for grading at the breed shows will probably want their foals born a little earlier, and that's so that they'll be a bit more mature by the time they come to be judged. Thoroughbred breeding is a whole different ball game. Usually for thoroughbreds, the breeders want those foals born as soon after January the 1st as possible. I suppose you know, but for those of you who don't know, the birth date for all thoroughbred horses is the 1st of January. It's not really that complicated, but it's a bit complicated to explain. That's so that all horses are, after the 1st of January, they change their age. So when the next January the 1st, all the foals born the previous year will be 1 year old. The next January the 1st, they'll all be 2 years old. and 2 years old is the earliest under British racing rules and Irish racing rules, I think, and probably French and most of Europe, is 2-year-old. That's the earliest they will race. So obviously the horses born closest to January the 1st are going to be the more mature and the more able to withstand the stress of racing. Those that are born April are going to be very immature and might even have to wait till the next year, until they're 3-year-olds, before they can be mature enough to race. Thoroughbreds do mature very quickly, so the 1st of January is the birthday for all thoroughbred horses, whereas with our other breeds of horses, you will say after January the 1st, if my mare, say for example I have a 7-year-old mare and she was born on May the 20th, then after the 1st of January, she's 7 years old, I will say 7 years old rising 8. That means that her next birthday, whenever it is, she's going to be 8. So you still have a dividing line on the 1st of January. That's when you start to indicate that the horse is going to be 8 this year. Now, once your mare is in foal, you have almost a year to plan her accommodation for when she foals. So the first thing you're going to be looking at is, are you going to have her foal inside or out? I prefer inside because you have access to the mare. She's not going to run away from you. If anything, if she needs help or you need to monitor her, you can have a camera on her. Inside is the best way to do it. A lot of breeders prefer outside foaling because there's less risk of infection when the foal is born on grass. But when I say the foal is born on grass, I mean it's born on grass. You wouldn't want her foaling outside in the mud. You wouldn't want her foaling outside in a sand paddock. So outside foaling would have to be where you have a nice grassy paddock and a small paddock so that you have access to the mare. In my experience, and I think it's fairly safe to say that this is the case in most cases, mares rarely foal during daylight. I have had the odd foal during daylight, but mostly they will foal in the dark in the early hours of the morning. And you don't want to be running around in a paddock after a mare who is foaling and doesn't want to be caught. You don't want a foal to be born in the dark and lie down underneath a fence and wake up on the other side of the fence. Then you have a stressed mare and foal, and a potentially hazardous problem. The other thing about foaling outside is that it's going to be difficult to keep a camera on a mare outside, so you're probably going to want to be doing foal checks throughout the night. If you're foaling inside, you can have a camera on her. The benefit of the camera is that you don't necessarily have to be getting up out of bed every half an hour to check on your mare. It's advisable, in my experience, if you're the one that's responsible for the foaling, that when you go to bed at night, you don't change, you keep your outside clothing on, so that you check your camera, you see the mare is just about to foal, or she's in the process of foaling, you can just leap out of bed and go out to the stables. If your mare is out in the paddock, again, you're not going to get undressed. You probably don't even want to go to bed. You will want to sleep at the stables and get up every half an hour and check her. When I was in Canada, we even had a tent out in the prairies where we would sleep, and there were some howling Chinook winds that came rattling through, and you slept in a tent and you got up every half an hour with your flashlight and went and looked at the mare. And that was not, and they never foaled on the nights that you were out there. They'd fall. They'd wait till you went home for breakfast in the morning and fall. But anyway, now if you have the opportunity of having a mare in a corral or paddock, then obviously you're going to go with that. Let's look at your foaling box. When it comes to foaling boxes, the bigger the better, and I'll tell you why. I've got a foaling box that I had made bigger than all my other stalls because I thought I just need a couple of feet more to make it a foaling box. And that was fine for even my biggest mare to have her foal. But what I didn't take into consideration was when you're bringing in the mare and foal at night, when the foal is 2 or 3 weeks old, that stable is not big enough, or my stable wasn't big enough. I mean, it was big enough, but it was starting to look a bit snug. And foals, they don't like to, when they're standing on 4 feet, they don't want to just be standing there like mares do. They don't want to be standing there and eating. They'll stand there and nurse, they'll lie down, or they'll run around. And there's absolutely zero room for a foal to run around in a small box. So you do need bigger the better when it comes to a foaling box. Again, get your camera set up where you can see the mare all the time, and make sure that your box doesn't have any fitments where the foal could get hurt. So no hay racks, no hay nets, no hay bars, no bucket brackets, nothing that the foal could get hurt on, because if they can get hurt, they will get hurt. For water, I use one of those plastic trugs, you know, the soft sort of vinyl type, and I don't fill it full up. If a foal does fall head first, and I don't know if this has ever happened, but if a foal falls head first into one of these plastic trugs, the sides are just going to fold down, and the foal can get out quite easily. I make sure that I keep it topped up throughout the day and at night, obviously, because foals quite often will drink quite a lot, even from day one, as well as drinking milk from the mare. The mare, because she's lactating, she needs lots of water, so they will go through a lot of water. So even if you have to have 2 of these trugs just to make sure they've got enough water to see them through the night, then do that. The other thing is, make sure your bedding comes right to the door. I know we've got this habit nowadays of pushing the bedding back and leaving a bare space at the front of the stall. That's not really a good idea for foals. Foals, they don't know anything about the world. When a foal wants to lie down, it will just lie down. And if it's going to lie on a rubber mat or a concrete floor, it will do so. So make sure that you have bedding that comes right to the door, so the foal will always be lying on the bedding. Speaking of bedding, you want to go with straw. I always go with straw. The reason being is that foals are born wet. And if they are lying on any other kind of bedding that's just small particles that can get into the umbilical cord or any other orifices and carry infection with it, straw will, any water will just run through, any wetness will just run right through the straw, and you can keep putting fresh straw on top. So there's less risk. There's not zero risk, but there's less risk of the foal getting an infection in the first few precious hours of life. I will go on in a future video to talk about what to do when the foal's born to protect it, but in any case, I recommend straw bedding. When your mare gets close to foaling, make sure you're there. Make sure you're there when she's actually foaling. She'll be perfectly all right. She'll be able to have the foal herself without any problem. But you should be there just in case. And I recommend a foaling kit. I will give, at a later date, I'll give a list of items that you should have in a foaling kit, a pre-prepared foaling kit, which will contain most of the items you need in an emergency. you probably won't need it. I had a falling kit, a couple of years ago. I ordered a falling kit and had it sent to me, and I had it sitting there, and it contained, amongst all the other things, it contained a packet of polo mints. And I think the packet of polo mints was the only thing I used out of it, because I already had iodine in my horsey first aid kit, so I didn't need any of the items in it. But just having it there gives you peace of mind, and knowing that you have items to use if you need. We do make our own falling kit here, and we will sell them. I will put the link on, they're for sale on eBay, and I'll put the link in the comments. Regardless of whether your mare falls in or out, you do need a safe, small, restricted area to turn her out in, a small paddock to turn her out in, probably the second day when the foal's 2 days old. After 48 hours, you know that the mare and foal have bonded. You know that the foal is healthy. 48 hours, you probably want to turn the foal out. Turn the mare and foal out for the first time. Paddock, the same kind of paddock you have for the, if she was foaling outside, same as you would have for a foaling paddock. Good fencing, rubber buckets, and possibly within sight and sound of other horses that the mare knows, just so that she feels comfortable. The reason I say restricted is that I have made the mistake of putting a mare and foal out in a field the first time I turned them out, and the mare just ran around and around and around for about 20 minutes, and foals never run around that long normally, not by choice. So I had to catch her and get her in before the foal collapsed in exhaustion. So you don't want that situation. You want a controlled area where the mare is free to walk around, free to graze, have a little trot around and show her foal off. But you can restrict them and bring her in, catch her and bring her in when you need to. Once you're sure that the mare and foal are settled in a small paddock and they seem to be happy, getting along well together, you can put them out into a bigger field during the day. I would still recommend keeping a close eye on them during the day and bring them in at night. But they can go out into a bigger field. Don't worry if it has electric fencing. The wide white tape is perfectly all right for a foal. They learn very quickly not to touch it. Again, you probably want to make sure that you have water on the ground at ground level where the foal can reach it. So if you have automatic drinkers that are too high up for the foal, please make sure that you put a rubber bucket or one of the plastic trugs in there with water in it for the foal. And you can also have the mare within sight and sound of other horses that she knows. I wouldn't recommend putting them in with her in the very early days, but certainly within the first few days she can go out where she can see and hear them, and she'll probably feel a lot more settled and comfortable when she knows that there are friends around that she knows. So now we've thought this far, it's a lot to take in. We will bring more advice in future videos, so please make sure that you are subscribed and that you have the bell clicked for notifications. Please feel free to leave comments, and look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.